Before you can start with the synchronization of users from Azure AD, from Microsoft Entra ID to your WordPress website, you need to ensure the correct configuration of the plugin. There are several ways to achieve that. You can, for example, look at the tutorial and the table that is provided here. You can look up every single option on the page and check the value that is currently configured and replace or add the value that is listed in this table. Alternatively, we can use the plugin self-test, because the plugin self-test, when it encounters an issue, in some cases it will provide an option to fix it and to basically update the configuration for you. But let's first of all scroll down. And let's scroll down to the tile here for synchronization, for user sync. And let's enable it. And let's go to the user sync configuration page. And let's see what happened here. So we can see that we've enabled user synchronization, but you can also see a warning that we have not yet configured app-only permissions. And this is an important prerequisite for WPO365 user synchronization. So, did we miss something? Yes, we did. Let's quickly return to the tutorial and let's have a quick look at the prerequisites. And here you find a very important entry. You have to enable support for application-only scenarios by completing the tutorial on integration and configure the application permissions. In this case, what I'm missing here is that I've simply not enabled the use of application access. I have already configured all the necessary API permissions, etc. So I can simply just check the box here to use the app-only tokens, and I have configured those for the existing app registration, for single sign-on, so that WPO365 can connect to Microsoft Graph and have the authorization to read all users. Enough said. Let's scroll down, let's save this configuration, and let's continue now to the plugin self-test. And we are actually automatically taken there now. Let's execute the self-test. And since I have configured single sign-on, the self-test will also test this portion of the plugin. So I will sign in with one of my accounts. And let's scroll down to the section for user synchronization, which is here. There is a test case on WP cron, but we'll come to that later. Let's now look whether we can synchronize users with application permissions, because that is what we want. First of all, it says it's recommended to disable the automatic email response to users when their password or email is changed. So let's click Fix It. Again, the self-test repeats, so I'm asked to sign in, which I happily do. And I go back to where I came from, to my user sync section here. And now I can see that it says that we're actually ready to synchronize users with application permissions. I'm not interested in the delegated part. And you can actually click View to see an example of the data that the plugin is able to retrieve from Microsoft Graph. Let's have a quick look at the other test cases. Let's look at the configuration section. Is there anything that we have to update here? It's complaining that we haven't configured any custom domain names, but this is depending on your requirement. If your intention is to create a user synchronization job that will only synchronize users from a specific domain, then you can configure the job to check domains, but then you must also make sure that you add your custom domain names, those domains that are used to create usernames, that you have added those domains to the list of custom domain names on the user registration page. So let's have a quick look. I can scroll here all the way up, and here, for instance, I can add WPO365.com because users in my tenant will get this domain ending. There's another option that cloud-only users will get the ending WPO365 demo.onmicrosoft.com. Because I've made changes, I need to save the configuration here, and I can go back to the plugin self-test and I can start it to check whether this has now been resolved. Of course, I'm asked to sign in again. I will scroll down to the section for configuration and I can see that custom domain names are now configured. There is one more thing that I need to look at here, which is that I need to select the beta version of Microsoft Graph. This is a recommendation from me personally because the beta version provides a richer set of data. So I simply click Fix It. And well, you know the procedure by now. The self-test repeats and I can scroll down to check whether it has indeed been fixed. And yes, it has been fixed. I can also confirm that. If I would go to the integration page, I can see now that the graph version here is set to beta. One last thing to verify, if I go to the single sign-on page, there is a section for inclusions and exclusions. For user synchronization to work as expected, it needs to have these paths here freed from authentication. The self-test will also check for these values in this specific list and will offer you the option to add those if they are missing. This concludes the configuration of WPO365, so that you as an administrator are now ready to continue with the next step to create a first user synchronization job.